Welcome to Casual Politics, Lord Healey.
you.
Thank you very much for accepting my request, and it's an honor for me to be here. Thank you very much. You've been Defense Secretary in the 60s, Chancellor of Exchequer in the 1970s,
That's right.
and Deputy Leader of the Labour Party in the 80s. So my first question, how did you get involved in politics?
I think it was basically when I was a student at Oxford. I wasn't terribly interested before, but the Master of Balliol ran in a by-election for being MP for Oxford, and I got deeply involved in that, and then I became chairman of the Labour Club at Oxford, and of course then at the end of the war I got a seat in Parliament in Yorkshire, and I had a lot of jobs, Chancellor of the Exchequer and Defence Secretary were the main ones. And I really enjoyed it all my life, although I'm not so active in politics now as I used to be. And of course politics has completely changed, because in my time politics was above all determined by class, and working class people voted Labour, middle class voted Tory, and they were quite different. Now the class factor has stopped counting in politics at all. If you ask a person now what class they're in, they say, "Don't be a fool. I left school 30 years ago."
And do you think, you talked about class divisions, that it has disappeared? Do you think that British politics has become it's at its worst or best, given that it has become less ideological than it was in your days?
It's a very difficult question to answer that, because it is completely different now, and people don't think in class terms at all. But I personally think that's a very good thing, and the fact that class is no longer a major factor, I think it's a good thing for politics.
And who's to blame for that the class divisions has disappeared?
Well, I think it's basically the introduction of the welfare state, and a situation in which the condition of people didn't change anything like as much as it did in my time.
And do you think that the post-political generation, were they shaped by galvanizing force of collective military endeavour?
Well, I think when I began in politics, it was dominated by class, and very difficult to find, for example, conservatives who were not upper class, but now class isn't a factor at all in politics, and I think that's a very good thing.
And do you think that before, was it better that politicians, they used to earn a living before entering in politics, but in a completely other field, not related to politics, whereas nowadays politicians, they just, after they leave uni, they enter in politics without having an experience of the real world?
I think that's a great disadvantage of politicians now. I mean, the great advantage of my generation was, first of all, we were all in the army for 5 or 6 years, and we got an experience of real life which is difficult to get in the same way these days. And now class has nothing to do with politics whatever, and the big divisions in politics now are mainly foreign policy, and very often the parties are divided internally over foreign policy divisions. You know, issues like Afghanistan or
Iraq,
Iran,
yes, or Iraq, because we got soldiers, because there are soldiers there, so that's why they're more interested.
That's right.
That's why. So you talk about foreign policy. Do you think that are we about to see another new Cold War?
Pardon?
Do you think that we're about to see another new Cold War?
Oh, a new Cold War? I don't really think so, no.
No, but now Russians, they're provocating other countries.
Yes, I mean, there is a Russian problem in a sense there.
Yes.
For a long time. There wasn't
How could we
one.
solve that problem, Lord Healey?
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, the situation in Russia has changed enormously over recent years, and Putin is almost a dictator in a sense that Yeltsin wasn't at all, for example.
Yes.
So I think that in that sense a Cold War is come back, but although it's mainly over issues like the Ukraine, whereas the Cold War was overwhelmingly about Europe in those days.
And now, because of that Russian threat, do you think that the UK should not give up the Trident, as you were advocating in the 80s to give up the Trident?
Well, I think it's sensible to keep the Trident, and I was never in favour of giving it up because having a Trident means that the Russians will never attack you with nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm. So would you like the new government, whether it's Labour or Conservative, to ring-fence the defence budget?
To what?
To ring-fence the defence budget.
I don't think you need to increase the defence budget, because I think the possession of nuclear weapons in itself is a big deterrent, and of course they don't cost much to keep once you've got them.
And come back to your career, to your political career, when you were Chancellor of Exchequer. Now, when you look back, and do you feel that actually your time as Chancellor of Exchequer was regarded as being synonymous with crisis and decline of the country?
You mean
That it was synonymous.
being Chancellor of the Exchequer?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That it was being regarded as being synonymous with crisis
Yeah.
and decline of the party.
I don't think it's like that now at all.
Yeah. So
And the class factor, which was dominant in my time when I was young, is absolutely meaningless now.
yeah. And when you were Chancellor of Exchequer, Britain was known as the sick man of Europe. And also you were, as a government, you laid out the wage rise, the price rise,
Yeah.
and also that people should have paid 83%, either 83 or 98% of income tax.
Yeah.
So what do you think of all that when you think back?
Well, I'm very glad that we got rid of most of that.
Mhm.
But, I mean, that was an inevitable aspect of the class divisions which were dominant in politics. Now, class is not important at all in politics. And if you ask a person what class they belong to, they say, don't be a fool. I left school 20 years ago.
So, those reasons that I just mentioned, price rise and everything that the government forced people to do you think, did it pave the way for Margaret Thatcher and Thatcherism to take over?
Oh, I think that she was a product very much of the class system of her period. Although, as you know, she was so so limited in her political views that in the end the Tory party got rid of her.
Mm-hmm. But what do you make of Thatcherism?
Of what?
Of Thatcherism? Do you think that it was your policies that they adopted and they just named it as Thatcherism?
Well, I think that it was very much the sort of conservative which he supported.
Yes.
But it no longer counts at all in the Tory party.
And you were some people they say that you as your time as in the 80s you were a warrior, you were fighting to save the party, and some people they said that you were not fighting enough to win back the party to shifting to the left. Do you agree with that?
I think that's absolute nonsense. It didn't slip to the left.
But it was but many votes been taken over by the SDP, Social Democratic Party.
Well, I don't know the details really. I think the Labour Party is still with the Tory Party. They're the two leading parties, and the Liberals and the Greens and so on are much less important by comparison.
And do you think also that you saved the Labour Party because you won over Tony Benn over the leadership?
Well, I defeated
Right.
him.
Yes, you defeated
him. I think that was very important. Yes.
Yes. And why do you think that it was one of the reasons that you lost against Michael Foot? Because you could have become Prime Minister. He was unelectable to become Prime Minister, the most unelectable Labour leader.
I know. Well, I think the reason really was I was not sufficiently limited in my political views to appeal to the Labour Party of those days. Now, of course, it's completely changed.
And why were you asked to join or to defect to SDP in the 80s?
Yeah.
Were you asked to join them?
Yes, one or two of my friends. I mean, Shirley Williams was a great supporter whom I supported. And I supported most of her views. But it was very limited, the difference of views of the Liberals, and they never made a big impact on politics compared with Labour and Tories.
But if you had joined them, do you think that you could have prevented less votes to go to Conservatives?
I might have, I just don't know, it's difficult to say.
But anyway, because the party shifted to the right in the mid-90s, so as SDP, they were trying to do it in the 1980s, so why you were not very fond of their policies? Why? Because you were supportive of New Labour government.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So why did not of SDP? Because they were advocating for the same things that New Labour.
But I think the trouble with the SDP is that they were internally very divided.
They were divided. So that's the only reason that.
I think it's the main reason, yes.
And you always said in your interviews that you never regretted that you didn't become Prime Minister, but you regretted that you didn't become Foreign Secretary. Why is that?
I think that was a mistake to believe that, because I think I had, as they all thought at the time, that when I was Defence Secretary I controlled our foreign policy. In fact, they used to say that the Labour Party is divided into two groups, those that thought I should be Foreign Secretary and those that thought I was.
So, in your opinion, who were the most outstanding figures of the Labour movement?
When?
Your time.
Well, I think the big difference in my time is that the trade union movement had enormous power they controlled the majority of the seats on the National Executive Committee, both the women's seats and the men's seats, and that the power of the unions has completely disappeared now.
And do you think that was it a great relief to you when John Smith, as the leader of Labour Party, introduced one man, one vote?
Oh yes, I agreed with that very, very much indeed.
So do you think was it one of the reasons that now they become less influential within the Labour
Well,
Party?
yes, because that was what ended the power of the trade union movement.
But still, Lord Healey, it's very interesting because Jim Callaghan, he became Prime Minister, and trade unions, he put him in power, and he took him off power in 1979. And trade in 2010, again, they chose the leader of the Labour Party. So could we say that they become less influential? Ed Miliband, he was chosen by trade unions.
I think the trade unions have much less influence than they used to have.
But see, for choosing to choose the leader of the Labour Party, still they very
well, they don't have that power any longer.
Yeah. Okay, they don't have
No.
it anymore. They don't have it. And
You see, in the old days, the trade unions controlled both the women and the men who won the thing. Now they don't control anything.
yes. In 1997, when Labour got re-elected after 18 years in wilderness, did you recall, because you had stood down as member of parliament 5 years earlier. So did you want still to be part of that government, to remain?
I wasn't particularly excited about it, no.
No, you were not.
No.
And do you think, was it really New Labour?
Pardon?
Was it really New Labour, in your opinion?
I think it was new in many ways, yes. I think it was.
Because some people, they say it was only some of old Labour's policies. It just the name that attracted to more people. So you don't agree with them?
No, I don't think so.
You know, and now that Labour, they were ousted out of government after 13 years in government. Do you think what was your party's greatest mistake in those 13 years in power?
I think our biggest mistake really was the sort of left-wing approach which men took, and that did us a great deal of damage, and it's completely gone now.
I know about the European Union. You were always against that the government adopt the euro currency.
About what?
That to adopt euro currency.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Well, I personally think that we have a much more control of our economic policy if we have our own currency.
And do you think, have you become more agnostic over Europe than you were in the 50s and 60s?
I think the Labour Party has moved much more to my position is the thing.
Yes. And do you support the government's pledge to for in-out referendum if they get re-elected in 2017, Conservative government? In-out referendum in 2017. Do you support it? The referendum in 2017.
The what?
Referendum.
Oh, the referendum,
yes. Yes, in 2017. do you support it?
I'm not particularly.
No. Why you're?
Well, I'm not very interested in it really, and I don't think it's a good thing dividing the country over Europe.
Yes, but the country was already divided over Scotland. So do you think that was it a good campaign that Labour and Conservatives they fought to gain back the country from takeover of nationalists?
It's very difficult to say. I mean, as you know, originally the whole of Ireland sent MPs to London, and then after Ireland became independent, they developed their own political system, and it's only the Northern Irish now who influence politics. But I think the importance of the Irish nationalist movement in the Labour Party is much less than it was. I think that people like McGuinness and McAdam have much less influence than they used to have.
And do you think that if Labour Party they do a deal, a coalition with SNP, would it defect more voters from prevent them from voting for Labour Party? And defend more?
I think it probably would. I think the sensible thing for the Labour Party is to stick to its present situation.
And do you think that the new Labour was responsible partly for the rise of nationalists when they devoted more power to Scotland?
Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, my own family comes from Southern Ireland, although Ireland wasn't divided, of course, when my father first came to England. But nationalism is still a major factor in Northern Ireland, and I don't think the Labour Party can afford to ignore it.
And do you think that if SNP they come to government or a deal with the Labour Party or a coalition, will they bankrupt and break up Britain?
It's very difficult to say. I mean, I think but I think myself it's not sensible for Scotland to have an independent, to have independence really. And I don't think they'll get it. They won't vote it, I don't think.
And now about the general election, very interesting. 1951, 90% of people they voted for either Conservative or Labour. But now, even in the last general election, less than 65% only voted.
You mean bother? I think they don't bother to vote at all. Really, I think it's really the interest in politics.
Why there is a disengagement mainly among students?
Well, because they just don't see the point of it.
Because you are very engaged, and even in 1945 Labour conference, you from the army with your uniform, you went to the Labour Party conference.
Yeah.
Well, why then now students they're not
Well,
engaged
why not?
anymore? Yes, they
mean,
say that they're all the same. They say they're all the same. The establishment. Do you agree with that?
No, I think the real point was that after the war, the importance of being in the army was very important politically, and that is much less the case than it was, although issues like Afghanistan are still very, very important.
And how could we engage more with disengaged voters?
With what?
How could we engage more with disengaged voters?
Well, I don't know quite.
They don't.
No.
And do you think that why Labour Party they not popular as they used to be before?
Well, I think the real point is that the ideological element in the Labour Party is not popular with the public at all.
It's not popular. So that's why they gaining less votes.
Yes, I think so.
And why Ed Miliband is so unpopular in your opinion?
I don't think it is so unpopular. I think that's exaggerated by the newspapers.
So why then people they say to become a prime minister, his poll ratings are very poor at the moment?
Well, I think it's quite possible he'll win the election.
Do you think that?
Oh yes, it's quite possible. Yeah.
Well, yes, but the polls they show that probably Labour will lose between 45 and 50 seats to SNP. Do you think still is it possible to get in, to win a majority
Well,
government?
There's a possibility with that, but then I think the question will be what is the political race between the SNP and Labour,
Yes.
and there's no reason why they shouldn't be very close together.
Yes, very true, very true. And do you think that now less people are in because we got less charismatic leaders? We haven't got Nyron Bevans. We haven't got Lord Healey. We haven't got claimant athletes anymore. Why is that? Why we don't have politicians like them anymore?
Well, I think basically because politics itself is a much less exciting thing than it was.
It was. Do you think it was more exciting at your time?
And to most people it seems much less important than it used to.
Yes, and it was more exciting at your time because there was a war, so that's why you wanted to save the country from the movement of fascism or Nazism.
Yeah.
And we haven't got those movements anymore. So do you think that? But the rise of extreme right parties.
Oh
do you
yes,
think
communism is no longer a factor in politics
Yes.
in Britain at all.
And how do you regard UKIP as a party?
I think it basically represents the view of a lot of people that we don't want to be tied up to the foreigners.
Yes.
And I think it has some advantages from that point of view.
So do you only regard it as a protest party or as a substantial party that which would be elected?
Well, I think
Part
they're
of
an
the
important party, but it's basically because they've chosen, they're very good at arguing their case.
Yes. And do you think that is Nigel Farage an effective leader?
Well, we shall see. We don't yet know that really.
And my last question will be that what would you like to see more in British politics? Whoever wins the next general election, what would you like the next Prime Minister to do for the United Kingdom?
Well, I think basically we still face quite a number of very difficult questions abroad which divide the party, although don't unite it.
Oh, which are the foreign policies?
Well, yes, foreign policy. How we handle the European question is a key one.
And do you think that either Labour or Conservative they got enough response to that problem? Have they got enough solutions to that problem?
I don't think we have yet, no.
We have yet. Lord Healey, it was a great pleasure and honour for me.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All right.